interesting how discussions of feminism eventually get round to discussion on race. And we know that Will Knowland first got into the headlines, or the news anyway, because of his view of patriarchy. His most viewed video was called The Patriarchy Paradox, with 235,000 views, and it was the cause of his dismissal as a master at Eton. The school basically told him to take it down, and he refused, and he was sacked. Interestingly, Charles Moore defends Trendy Hendy, the Eton headmaster who dismissed him. Charles Moore is Catholic and writes for The Spectator and wrote the biography of Thatcher. So we have co-opted members of the establishment who are on the whole quite docile, and they are docile because they have an interest in remaining a member of the political establishment, and if they're kicked out or sacked from their job, then they would lose all the status that they had spent years acquiring. Now, Will Knowland is clearly a man of principle. He refused to take his video down, and because of that, it had 235,000 views, and even if you didn't quite get all that he said, you would know that it's something against feminism. And feminism is always of interest to women as well as men, so it's pretty much a universal subject of controversy. This means it is political in every day and in every age and time. Just when we think that the matter is settled, there will be new problems, new complaints. Long ago, there came to be invented the institution of marriage. And this was the idea of men and women marrying each other and not having sex with anybody else that they're not married to, with occasional variations of polyandry or polygamy. But even talking about it now will cause dissension and people to ask themselves, should we allow to be, well, should anything prevent us from doing with our sex organs what we would like to do with our sex organs? I mean, if you look at Judaism, for example, they're very strict. I mean, the really Orthodox Jews are actually very strict on spilling seed, as they call it. Now, you think that's a bit intrusive, but when you think of how, well, dangerous it could get if we only masturbated and never had sex with each other and never had children because we don't like children anymore, we don't want children, and well, that would be a terrible thing because then the human race would die out. And Immanuel Kant had a great way of working out if any act was moral or not by the consequences that would naturally ensue if we can imagine the whole world doing it. So if we told a lie and wondered if that was really such a bad thing, we would have to ask ourselves, what would happen if everybody told lies? But perhaps it might be all right if we told the occasional white lie about whether your bum looks big in this dress or something of that nature, which is meant to stop you from having hurt feelings from an over-frank assessment of how big your bum looks in that dress. So, because of the current culture, when it's what do you call it, in transition, as a transgender person might be in transition from being male to female. It's a very delicate time, and people are very sensitive, and therefore things that were sayable before are no longer sayable, and all the usual conventions of the right to free speech have been thrown out the window. And anyway, Will Knowland was sacked, and Charles Moore defended the sacker of Will Knowland, trendy Hendy. Now this is clearly a dangerous time for British manhood. After all, Eton is supposed to be where the elite of our political establishment are being educated, and they can't even be told the first thing about gender politics. And Charles Moore, who's supposed to be a figure of establishment conservatism, is siding with trendy Hendy. And further controversy has been caused by Will Knowland interviewing E. Michael Jones. Now, I'm not going to get on my high horse and say, oh, I would never interview that anti-Semite. But that would, and that's precisely what I'm not going to do, because I interviewed E. Michael Jones not just once, but twice. And I was very grateful to him, because he kind of gave me my big break because of his, energy and openness and being prepared to talk to different people about the bee in his bonnet, about Jews and their revolutionary spirit. How is it worse for Will than for me? Well, maybe it's not. Maybe it isn't bad for him at all. But because of what the media have been saying about him, I suppose I feel a little concerned that he's kind of getting himself in too deep. But really, when you talk about who your sex partner ought to be, eventually you will get to the subject of degeneracy, and decadence, and dysgenics, and eugenics, and racial theory. It is a bit like trying to talk about morality without mentioning God or religion. It's almost impossible, really. Well, I think it is, in fact, impossible. So this stream is really about, I'm not even sure about how Will Knowland should have handled it. I don't think he has any regrets, I suppose. I don't know. But what it seems that the media are doing to him would be to discredit him, and he might be said to have walked into, what's the word? he might have been said to have committed an unforced error, if you want to talk in tennis terms. Is it worth having an anti-Semite on just because he talks about sex? And because, I mean, he is right about quite a few things about he who controls sexual morality controls society, or words to that effect. And it would be true anyway that, it's a kind of drug. People like it, people get hooked on it, and you can raise and lower the price of sex by telling women what kind of behaviour is acceptable and accordingly raise or lower the price of sex. And I happen to think that the price of sex must be priced exactly right, or terrible things will happen to your society and civilization. So where do these ideas of sexual propriety come from? Of course they come from religion. And when Westerners talk about religion, they will think about their Judeo-Christian heritage. And by this, they must surely mean the fact that their Bible is an amalgam of Jewish scripture as well as Christian scripture. And for other religions, in other parts of the world, the practice of marriage has also emerged and stayed with the Chinese, the Indians, and almost, well, all civilized societies that you would have heard of. Clearly, it is important who we are allowed to have sex with. We know that it's not just humans who are told what to do or not to do in this regard. With social animals, they have certain arrangements, such as herds of deer, and there would be this arrangement of the stag having a harem, the lion having his harem of lionesses, and these arrangements have stood these social animals in good stead over millennia, I guess. I guess these animals have been around longer than humans. I'm not sure exactly, but I imagine that they've been around for quite a while. So these social animals have rules about how to behave with each other. And chimpanzees and bonobos have slightly different sexual behaviors, but on the whole, well, I can't really tell the difference between a chimp and a bonobo. And of course, human societies mostly practice marriage, and when they don't, they decline and fall. In fact, there is a passage in Machiavelli's The Prince, and offhand, I seem to remember him talking about ancient, effeminate civilizations being vulnerable to attack, or just being generally weak and doddery. What is this to do with E. Michael Jones? Well, he talks, well, he is obsessed about Jews. And it is really this that makes him interesting. I mean, sex and Jews, sex and Jews. I guess this is pretty much guaranteed to get you attention in the West because everybody's obsessed by sex and apparently with Jews. And one of the things that E. Michael Jones says is that Jews are disproportionately involved in pornography. It was only today that I realised why they might be, because I've also heard that Jews are disproportionately involved in Hollywood, and I know that there's a social reason for this in that the professions would be closed to them, lawyer, legal profession, accountancy, and all the traditional establishment professions. That would be, they would make it harder for Jews to join, and therefore they thought they should do something that nobody's going to intrude on them. And so they became Hollywood, and obviously if you're big in Hollywood, you would already have all the studios and props and camera crews and camera equipment with which to, make porn. And of course you'd have access to all kinds of eager young women who want to make a career for themselves in the movies. So if that's the reason why there tends to be more Jews in porn, that might be the reason, and also they maybe smarter or more successful for cultural reasons, perhaps. I know that many Gentiles resent the success of Jews, but if you don't want Jews to profit from pornography, is it because you hate pornography, or you just don't like the idea of Jews benefiting from it more than Gentiles? Because if you do want to ban pornography, then you should ban it for all. I mean, there's no reason why you should forbid it for Jews but not for Gentiles. And but perhaps that you don't really want to ban pornography because you consume it and therefore you want it to carry on, but you can just keep going on about how Jews disproportionately benefit or make pornography. And that would be a form of anti-Semitism, which is not something I would say should be illegal, but if you mind Jews benefiting from pornography more than you mind Gentiles benefiting from pornography, then I guess you are anti-Semitic, but I don't think there should be a law against it. Clearly, E. Michael Jones is one of those people who want to go on about it, saying that there's something about Jews who want to subvert the religion and culture of Gentiles. I suppose it's difficult to get certain ideas out of your head, because to be fair to sincere anti-Semites, they might really not be able to see the difference. They would see Jews doing certain things or doing it better than Gentiles, and think it's something to do with being Jewish. And resent Jews for those reasons. It is also possible that God, having created Jews, made Jews as chosen people for his own particular reasons, might have created a mechanism to punish Jews if they don't do what he chose them to do. And it's a shame that I don't think I'll get a chance to interview E. Michael Jones again. I know he only agreed to speak to me a second time because I suppose I was unusual from his usual audience and people who want to talk to him. And I think he might have wanted to convert me to Catholicism. But when he realised I wasn't going to move towards Catholicism because I had certain views about the Trinity, he chose not to speak to me again. But not before he said that he would convert to Islam if he thought that would solve the problems. And I suspect he might be avoiding me because I would be banging on about secular Quranism and how it would solve his problems, and he didn't want to hear any of that. And this leads me to think that was perhaps intellectually dishonest of him, and it is sad. It is sad that people can't be intellectually honest and keep promises to me or themselves about what might have caused a problem. So I know he's spoken to quite a few people that I've streamed with bigger channels than me. And his position is that Jews do the things they do because of their peculiar traits, ethnicity, and religion. I suppose it's because I think I know more about Jews that I find it exasperating that he would make the same old claims again and again. I mean, if he knew anything about Israel, he would know that half the Jews are observant and the other half are not, and there is a culture war in Israel in the same way there's a culture war in Britain between Leavers and Remainers, and a culture war in America between Trump supporters and the American liberal political establishment. And of course this makes everything very unstable when you have a kind of 50-50 situation, because in the animal kingdom, evenly matched animals fighting for mates and resources would have to fight each other. In fact, they are honor bound to do so, because there would be, nobody would think of you as being cowardly if your opponent is much bigger and stronger than you. But if your opponent was about the same size and the same age and the same strength as you, then you would have to fight him. And that makes sense, I think. But I think also that the division is more than Trump and Biden, Brexit and Remain and Leave, and observant and non-observant Jews in Israel. I think fundamentally it's about gender politics. And gender politics are a product of gender conflict, gender competition, and there is more conflict between men and women because of the egalitarianism that persists in liberal society. The idea that women and men can do the same things. Is it going to make them get along a bit better if they did the same things, or not? And I think the answer must be no. They won't get along better because they will be in competition with each other. And men will perceive that women will have the law on their side, working to the disadvantage of men. And obviously they'll resent it. A better arrangement would be men and women doing different things and getting themselves, making partnerships with each other so that they can complement each other's ability to do things. And in this way, they would get along better. So the idea of the traditional idea of the man bringing home the bacon and the woman looking after the house and the children, it's because the man can't imagine himself staying at home and cleaning the house and looking after the children, and that it just becomes an obvious arrangement to make, and therefore both will be dependent on each other, and for that reason stay with each other because of this mutual interdependence. And I think men and women would be kinder towards each other if they were not always competing. So if you can imagine, if in the same household, husband and wife coming back and wanting to tell the other about their bad day, and having to wait their turn to speak and feel that the other person is just waiting for them to finish so that they can talk. This would be rather different from, I guess, an attentive wife, genuinely interested in, whatever the husband had to tell her about his day at work. Or, maybe she has a problem and he might want to, reach out into each other's world by paying attention to the other person speaking. So I think really the competition of egalitarian feminism would have a deleterious effect on gender relations on the whole. But I'm afraid it now seems that these feminist ideas are now so cemented that they can't be challenged. And this would be very sad because men and women do need to get along better so that they can marry each other and stay together for the sake of the children in order to produce the next generation. And obviously it would help if the government supported laws and practices that would tend to make gender relations a bit better. Oh, I see that Domingo wants to talk to me, and I can drop the link to him, but not in the chat, in case there are naughty people who will disrupt our conversation. Now let me try and finish what I was going to say, and it is that really, E. Michael Jones is an anti-Semite, and but he does say the right things about gender politics, and that I guess is what makes him such a problem for Will Knowland, who perhaps might be expected to know better, but maybe he doesn't. And I've been trying to reach out to him, but maybe he's not interested in talking to me because I do not support Christianity, and in fact, my position is that Christianity has failed, and it's time people acknowledged this and moved on to better things. And this is really, I suppose, what I've been trying to say. And now we wait for Domingo to arrive. No, I didn't see your clip from this interview, Stephen James. Hello, Domingo.
Clip from what interview?
What?
Oh, wait.
How's that? Was that okay?
Much better, much better.
Sorry, I lose track of
all your many voices.
My schizophrenia, my YouTube schizophrenia. So what was this about, a clip, an interview clip?
Yeah, this is actually, you know when you saw something and then you can't find it again. But I know that Will Knowland was complaining about Charles Moore, saying, oh, he should have interviewed that E. Michael Jones because he's such an anti-Semite, and he didn't challenge E. Michael Jones when E. Michael Jones said Jews were mostly, of the disproportionate number of Jews who are involved in pornography, and was basically saying, maybe he deserved to get what he got when he was sacked from Eton. That's my memory, but I can't find any references to it.
Well, they ran pornography before the internet came along. Now it's a free for all.
Yeah, it was called Blue Movies. I still remember how people called it, right?
Well, I'm not sure how people called it in the UK, but one of the big companies in the United States is Vivid, and that's a Jewish family that runs it, and their main competitors were all Jewish, and they're all, you can find interviews on the internet where they're proud of it, and they admit to it. It's not certainly not something that they shy away from.
I was suggesting that the reason why they're mostly into it was because they are mostly they run Hollywood, and they run Hollywood because they couldn't enter the more established professions.
It all goes back to organized crime, Claire. Las Vegas and Hollywood was basically just a 1-2 punch. They established Las Vegas. They went further west. They got into the movie business. They took it over. Oh, look, Brundle's in the chat. Hail Brundle. Hail Ricardo Williams, I mean. Okay, Claire, what is an anti-Semite?
Somebody who has a theory about Jews. I mean, I have a theory about Jews, but I don't think I'm as hostile to them.
Well, now hang on. Wait a minute. I've never heard.
I'm often being accused of anti-Semites because
I've never heard a definition that as follows: someone that has a theory about Jews.
Oh, okay. I mean,
that's what an anti-Semite is for you.
Well, okay. I'm just saying that you could get accused of anti-Semitism in the way that I've been accused of anti-Semitism.
Yes, but
because-
let's not concern ourselves with why someone might get accused of anti-Semitism. I'm asking Claire Caw, what is Claire Caw's definition of an anti-Semite?
or somebody who doesn't like Jews and has theories about Jews as a religion and as a race.
Would you say that an anti-Semite is someone who dislikes all Jews?
Well, another definition of anti-Semite would be somebody whom a Jew hates. and so, because maybe you didn't even intend it, but you say something and a Jew is offended, and then they'll call you anti-Semite. So, and therefore you are, I guess. I'm not saying that there should be, it should be a crime or anything, but because it's just one of those words that you can use to lower somebody, in status by using it on them.
And you love to call me an anti-Semite.
But you are. I know you can't help it. It's a white people thing.
And you
There's so many
love
obsessive people.
You love to call E. Michael Jones an anti-Semite.
Yeah, I think he is. I mean, I'm not saying he's a bad person. He obviously genuinely believes in it, but I just find it exasperating that, if you're so obsessed about Jews, at least, study them properly and not just assume that liberal Jews, observant Jews are exactly the same. It's like they're not. They don't even like each other.
I have studied them, Claire.
Yeah, but it's just the way you lump them all together, and
how do I lump them all
you
together?
take away their humanity by saying, oh, they're all this, they're all that, they always do this, they never do that, or whatever.
I've never judged all Jews, and I've never spoken in absolutes.
I know that fundamentally you're a nice person, but I can't. You just can't get yourself out of speaking in those terms. And I know lots of people like you.
Claire. Okay, look. Let's say we're living in a dystopian future, and for whatever reason, secular Quranism has taken hold.
Yay!
Do you truly and honestly believe that organized Jewish criminals will no longer practice illegal usury? That is to say,
no, of course I don't. There'll be lots of people, Jew and Gentile, who will be trying to get, to disobey, to get around these rules. Yes, of course.
Right. So you understand that there are no incentives or there's no guarantees that the laws of secular Quranism are any more effective than the current laws in place.
Okay. What I'm trying to tell you guys is that you don't believe in your own religion, and this weakens you, and to such an extent you can't even understand now that, even when you're always complaining about Jews, always complaining about Muslims, and I say, it's because you don't have a religion.
Claire, whether I have a religion or not, whether the person down the street has a religion or not, has no impact on the Jewish criminal that's organized and involved in all sorts of illicit activities.
There will always be criminals trying to get round the laws. And what I would say about the Jewish mind...
But can you also recognize that there will always be criminals
yes,
trying to work their way around the laws, regardless of whether Christians are good Christians or weak Christians?
There will always be people trying to subvert your society from within and without. And therefore...
And even if your society is an atheist one, correct?
Any society will have its internal and external enemies. And
even if you're in a Muslim Islamic society, correct?
Any society will have its own subversives and criminals. I already accept that.
Okay,
So,
then
but I'm
then
saying
you're
some rules are better
then
at dealing with these people than other rules.
okay, but then the fact that you think Christianity is kaput really has no bearing at all on
Why? Why?
on
Because
on criminal activity.
no, no, no. The whole liberalism
When you start
replaced
gasping like that, it's
Christianity.
because I know I'm right.
Liberalism replaced Christianity. What you're complaining about now is liberalism. So, if you can see how
How did
liberalism replaced
liberalism replace
Christianity as
Christianity?
a moral system, then you'll see that because Christianity failed, liberalism took over, and what you're complaining about now is liberalism being undermined by its own internal and external enemies.
How did liberalism replace a religion?
Because of the American Republic.
But are you saying liberalism has not replaced Islam and Judaism?
No, because Judaism is it's a religion of a minority. So what we're talking about in the West must be the mainstream moral and political system. The Jews they're just a little, tiny little bunch of people,
Has
and
has
I don't really
liberalism
listen to
taken
them anyway.
has liberalism taken over Israel?
Yes,
Is Israel a Jewish state?
it's a liberal democracy, and
Is it
it's
a
actually
is it a
destroying Jewish
Jewish
identity.
is it a Jewish is it a
It's
Jewish
actually
state?
destroying Jewish identity. If you ever follow Israeli affairs and listen to how some rabbis talk, it's like
Is Israel a Jewish state?
technically yes.
Well, if there's gay pride parades in Tel Aviv, does that mean Judaism has failed its own
Yes.
country?
Yes, because of the no-hide laws.
Okay,
It shouldn't even be allowed.
so shouldn't you be saying that Judaism is also kaput?
Well, I
Claire?
kind of, yeah, it is kaput, but it's their religion, and okay, I think it's
Okay,
important for them to do what they're
no,
supposed to do.
hang
So
on.
it's annoying that
We've
half
est-
of them are not even observant.
we've established the fact that you think Christianity and Judaism are both kaput.
Yes.
So really, I mean, why would you seek to win over the hearts and minds of the rabbinate if you know they've already failed?
Because they are still the people who are
Who are
higher
what?
status, because they're the ones I want to
You
rank
see,
before
you can't.
Gentile religions. I still want them to do it, even though they can't do it. They're too
You
scared.
can't help but laugh because you know that what you're talking is a bunch of bullshit.
No. I really want them to do it, and I know they can't, or they're too scared, and they're just as scared as everybody else. And
Okay,
they're
but
going to
why?
say,
But why not put in the same amount of effort to try and convince, say, the Pope?
well, I want them to ask the Pope how Christianity is not idolatry and blasphemy, and that they're not having any of it, because I guess historically it's like, well, we haven't done it for 2,000 years, we're not going to do it
And
now just for
you
you.
know
Yeah,
you know that Mohammed bin Salman is going to bring liberalism to Saudi Arabia.
yeah, and I know Muslims who are saying this is terrible. I have to. Where can I run to? Where in the world can I run to? And these are Gulf state Muslims.
Yeah, well, a lot of them are running to Europe. But here's the thing: when the first gay pride parade takes place in United Arab Emirates or Saudi Arabia, or any one of those countries, will you then be prepared to say that Islam is kaput?
Well, ideas. Okay, ideas are like recipes or instruction manuals, right? So what would happen is like, yeah, you have some electronic equipment and you don't use it properly and you can't be bothered to read the instruction manual, and you're not getting the full benefit of it because you're just too lazy to read it properly. So, but I'm saying, but if you decide to read it properly, or follow the recipe, or follow the directions and read it, then you will get the right result. So, it
Right,
can't be said
but
to
it
be kaput.
but we know, right? We know that people aren't practicing good religion.
Well, because their minds are such a mess. You know, it-
And
they're
how did
not
that
even
happen,
thinking
Claire?
logically.
How did that happen, Claire?
Well,
If
it's
we
easy
now
to
know,
indoctrinate people.
if we
So what
now
I
Claire, if we now know that Judaism is kaput, Christianity is kaput, and Islam will soon be kaput, what is causing this? If all three of the Abrahamic religions can't push back on liberalism, what is behind this liberalism force, unstoppable juggernaut? What's causing it? You can't
well,
blame Christianity if Judaism also failed.
well,
What's causing it, Claire?
the American and French revolutions were
What?
demonstrations of Western rejection of the monarchy and Christianity. So first the Americans did it, and then the French did it. And
Well,
basically, the
but
Americans
on the
say, screw you, George III. We're not going to listen to you anymore because you're this tyrant.
but you
And,
can't be president of the
and,
United
and we're
States if
not
you're
going
an
to follow
atheist.
your religion, which is Christianity. So America never had an established church. But that was the whole point of it. That was what the founding fathers wanted to do. They wanted to reject the church and the monarch. And the French Revolution did the same thing.
Do you know who Joe Atwill is, Claire?
Jill Atwill. Now I haven't heard of her.
Joe Atwill.
I don't. Is he the guy who wrote Caesar's Messiah?
Yes, he wrote. Well, he did a documentary about that whole thing, but he also co-hosts a podcast with Tim Kelly, and he talks about this recurring theme throughout history about the Masons versus the Roman Catholic Church.
Yeah, because if
And
you're Catholic, you're not supposed to become a Mason, right?
and the thing that Israel and the United States have in common is that Masons were both involved in the founding of those two nations. And who are the Masons?
You're going to say the Jewish, right?
I'm asking you.
Well, I mean, as far as I can tell, I mean, I did visit the.
And we know Israel was founded by atheists. Begin and Ben Gurion were atheists, both right and left wing.
They weren't Masons, were they?
No, but there were Masons. There were Mason settlers before 1948, and there's video footage of them singing as they were building the first settlements.
Okay, and what do you think that signifies?
Well, I'm just trying to tell you, if you see these revolutionary types that are working hard to remove the church from, well, at least, remove the church from the government.
Oh, the separation of church and state thing.
Right. Yeah. Even though the United States, it says in God we trust on their money, and you have to believe in God in order to be president. But I think we all know that some of these presidents are just playing make believe. But my point is,
you can still believe in God without believing in the Trinity. I think that was the whole point of the American Republic.
The point I'm making, Claire, is that you can't just blame Christianity going kaput for the state of affairs if Israel and the Arab world are also falling to this leftist, liberal madness.
Yeah, but liberal leftists, it all came about because Christianity failed. That's why you have all these sort of newfangled ideas like Marxism and socialism and communism.
When E. Michael Jones talks about the revolutionary spirit, right? Is that anti-Semitism?
No, I mean, because I mean, Jews are, I suppose, prepared to um, pick up an idea and run harder and faster with it than Gentiles. Maybe, because they understand how the functional rules. Because if they come from an orthodox background, they would see how rules work and how people get around them.
But they also understand how to circumvent laws and how to find loopholes and how to move goalposts, and they also know how to flee to Israel whenever they get caught in the diaspora.
Well, that would make sense, I guess, if you want to skip town and you're Jewish, and you think,
Right. And if Israel is willing to harbor Jewish criminals from abroad, well, you can either chalk that up to them simply believing that they're God's chosen and that crimes against the Gentiles are not really crimes against God or crimes at all, or you could say that they're really just LARPing to be religious, and that really there was no God involved in the establishment of the state of Israel from the beginning, and that really it's just a rogue terrorist state doing whatever it wants.
well, it has been equated to a Western colonial outpost, and it has to kind of do what America says. I mean, America does, give a lot to it, in terms of protecting it and, the Iron Dome and all kinds of things. So, but I think the Americans are kind of saying maybe we can't afford it now. Maybe Israel should get along better with its neighbors. And maybe that's the whole part of the liberalization of the Gulf states thing. It's like the changing the culture in the Middle East, to make it more samey so people can get along better in their consumerism and their sexual liberation. I mean, I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, I know that you don't know, and I know that you're doing a lot of guesswork. But I also know that you hate Christians.
It's the idolatry and the blasphemy.
But they're not idolatrous or blaspheming.
It's like odd. It's like Jesus was convicted and crucified for blasphemy. It says so in Matthew. He was tried by the Sanhedrin, and because he said his papa was God, and that you've been worshipping him for 2,000 years. Don't you feel you should be a little uneasy about this? I mean, if you really believe in
Claire,
God, I mean,
Claire,
there's so little joined up thinking in you people.
you
It's like,
people? What do you mean,
yes,
you people?
you people who identify as Christian.
Why are you such an anti-Christian?
Well, because it concerns me. It's like, but the Ten Commandments, it says no idolatry and blasphemy. And it's like Christians have been just doing this thing for 2,000 years. And now you try and tell them, it's like, huh?
But Claire,
Whoa.
you not recognizing the divinity of Christ makes you the heretic.
Well,
It makes you.
a Christian would say
Claire,
so.
it makes
But
you the
They
blasphemer.
would say, yes, we agree with you, Claire, that they are idolaters and blasphemers.
It makes you the blasphemer, Claire.
Well, a Christian would say so, but you can't explain why Jesus is God. You can't explain that. And every time I ask a Christian that question, they have a different answer. They refer to different verses.
It's not a question of explaining it. You have to choose to believe or not. And you've clearly chosen not to believe.
Well, if you ask a Jew why they believe what they believe, they'll just have to say, an Orthodox Jew said, well, because it says in the Torah, and that's how, absolutely, because it comes
Right.
from God, we have to follow it. Okay, so that's how they reason from everything.
You mean if I ask?
and the
You mean
same
if I
with-
ask the people that had Jesus crucified?
What? Sorry, what's the question?
You're saying I should concern myself with the opinions of Jews in regards to Christ.
You should.
You're saying I should concern myself
Yes,
with the
you
opinions
should. That is the
with the
reason,
opinions of
because-
Jews
Yes,
in
because
regards to the
worship
nature of Christ.
Jew. You worship a Jew, and it doesn't. You don't even understand that you worship a Jew, and therefore your whole religion is predicated on the existence of Jews, and then
But
you pretend, oh,
Claire,
it's nothing. It's not connected. Of course, it's connected.
you do realize, Claire, that the Hebrews of the Bible, they don't exist today.
Oh, here
What
we
we
go again. The Jews
what
aren't really the Jews.
the,
Well,
rabbinical Judaism is not what Jesus practiced.
no, of course not, because when he was in Israel, there was a temple. So he would go to and outside the temple, there were the tables of the money lenders that he flipped over. But after the Jews were kicked out by the Romans, they didn't have a temple anymore, so they couldn't do what they used to do when they were Israel. So they had to change their religion to sort of, well, we better remember what the hell we are supposed to be.
The synagogue of Satan had contempt for Christ, and they
We don't
wanted
know
to.
why. Do
And
we
they
know
and
why? Do we
and they,
know why?
well, because he posed a threat to their established rule and authority over the
Really,
people.
why? What did Jesus do that was so threatening to the Sadducees?
Winning hearts and minds
About what?
about the true nature of God and about how a person should be
What was
behaving in the world.
that he was God and his fellow Jews had better worship him? Well, if he said that, then he would be guilty of idolatry and blasphemy, and then they would want to execute him.
Claire, Claire, you have an irrational hatred of Christians.
No, that I don't. I don't hate you. I don't hate. Look, I've been living with a lot of post-Christians, and they don't believe. I talk to them. They don't
Did you
really
say
believe.
post-Christians?
Yes, that's what you are. Just acknowledge that you don't really believe. And when you believed, you were forced into it. You were threatened with being burnt at the stake if you dared to question the Trinity. When you took your religion seriously, and then when your government stopped doing
Claire,
these terrible things to you, you just disbelieved. That's why you get people like Jen and Daniel and all the others.
Okay,
All
well,
these sort of
I mean, I don't know about all that, but
really bit of idolatry.
Claire,
Ganda.
you refuse to accept the divinity of Christ.
Damn right I do. It's
Yeah, well, you can say that if you want, but it doesn't mean that you're right.
Why are you so fixated on worshipping a Jew when you don't even like them? It's so absurd. Why can't you just straighten your mind out? Why won't you straighten your mind out? You don't even like them, and then you're forced into this religion that means you have to worship a Jew. It makes no sense.
Claire, I don't mind worshiping Jesus, and I don't hold it against him that he's Jewish.
Yes, but why do you feel you have to worship a Jew or anyone?
No, it's not about worshiping Jesus for me personally. It's about recognizing the teachings and the value of the teachings.
Okay. What are the teachings that are so valuable?
Well, it's about being a good person, Claire.
Oh, okay, like the no good people outside Christianity. Really?
There can be good people outside Christianity, and what you would find is that more than likely they'd be aligned with the teachings of Christ, right?
What are the teachings of Christ?
I mean,
You can't even
I mean,
think of it.
I
You can't remember the word. Consider the lilies.
Claire, if you want me to tell you gospel stories like
Yes,
let he who
please,
is
please.
without sin cast the first stone and things like this, I'm not gonna bother telling you these things because it would be pointless, but also because I haven't read these in a long time.
I know.
But the theme, Claire, the overall theme is about being a good person.
Yeah, but there's nothing unique about that to Christianity. I mean, we all know that we're supposed to be kind and generous, and you know, Chinese, Indian. I'm sure Aborigines have some idea that they were supposed to be kind to their fellow tribespeople or something.
Claire, the most powerful mafia in the world is Jewish. You have to
Oh,
accept that,
really?
and you have to deal with that.
Well, what about the Italians?
Well, they're powerful, but they're not as powerful as the Jewish organized criminals, because you can't go to prison for questioning Italian historical events.
Okay, I really think that that's more an imperial thing. It's more a British thing. It's like this whole let's have a Holocaust memorial all over London, or that's a recent thing.
So
And I
you
don't,
think that's a British thing and not a Jewish
yes,
thing?
yes, because the British, I think, we lost our empire. Damn, we lost our empire.
Right.
Because we were so stupid, and we declared war on Germany twice, and it still blew up in our faces, and we lost our world empire. And then somebody thought, oh, I know, we're going to say we sacrifice our world empire
Yeah,
to save
okay.
the Jews. Yeah,
Okay.
that's our narrative. That's a post-war narrative.
So then, and if it's a British thing, then I guess that would explain why Canada put Ernst Zundel in prison and deported him, right?
Yeah, because Canadians are owned by the British. Technically, you're still British. You've got these sort of stupid titles like Governor General, these old colonial administrator titles. And in
Okay.
Australia,
And so
it's still
if
there.
and so if the rest of Europe and Germany and Russia also have Holocaust denial laws, is that also because of the British?
Well, Britain did start a war. It did start. Well, it declared war on Germany in World War One and World War Two, and it's a difficult subject to discuss, I guess, for Europeans who suffered so much.
Is it? And all the wealthiest oligarchs surrounding Putin, they're Jewish. That's just incidental, I suppose.
Christians are a bit funny about Jews. I mean, I never realized the pathology of the whole thing until I delved into it. I mean, what a can of worms. It's like,
here's the thing,
really?
Claire.
White people are a bit funny about Jews.
Claire, here's the thing. Christianity's a religion. It's not an ethnic group. Jews, on the other hand, are a religion, a race, an ethnic group, and a tribe.
Yeah.
But they're also a gang. They're also a network. They're also a cartel and a cabal.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that you understand that distinction between Jewish identity politics and Christian identity politics, can you see now why Jews have not addressed their, let's call it, criminal aspect sufficiently?
Okay, you're saying Jews are more cohesive, or they network better, or they look after each other more, and it's like
they have more incentive in not ratting
because
each other out.
They're a minority, and they know what history,
they aid and abet one another, and this is why Israel harbors international Jewish criminals.
Well, I guess if you're Jewish, you'd run to Israel if you got into trouble in any part of the world, right? That kind of makes sense.
and obviously there are exceptions. Some people don't get to benefit from that, right? Some people will go to prison when their crimes have been sufficiently so harsh to the point where, I suppose, Madoff had Jewish victims with his scam, um, so and Epstein didn't flee to Israel even though he loves that country, but every now and then we catch a Jonathan Pollard and we hold on to them, but a lot of criminals though that people don't hear about. A lot of drug dealers, mainly, and illegal traffickers, they do flee to Israel and they find safe harbor and they live out the rest of their days in that rogue terrorist Jewish state. Christians don't have a Christ land, right?
There's so many of you. I mean, it makes sense. It's like, okay, if you're a criminal in mainland China, then you think, well, I don't want to really go outside Chinese speaking territory. I'll go to Hong Kong, or a Hong Kong. Someone from Hong Kong might go to China to escape the police of Hong Kong, I guess, because they would want to go anywhere not too un-Chinese. So,
Claire, here's the point. Organized crime is a problem.
yes, and there's lots of
organized crime exists
criminals of all races. And
organized crime
nationalities.
exists in all countries.
Yes,
Organized crime knows every race, every creed, political creed. Organized crime infiltrates itself everywhere.
yeah.
But amongst all of the different factions of organized criminals, one is more powerful than all the others. And the one that is most powerful, the one that is most
in the West.
Well, of course they live in the West, Claire. Yes, obviously.
Yeah, and it's like, well, if the West is the most powerful imperial power,
and one of their roots of power is usury and the banking system, Claire.
yeah. So, and if you want to stop usury, then you'll have to use Islam. But you're too Islamophobic to even contemplate that. So I don't know what to do with you. I mean,
I'm not Islamophobic. I'm not Islamophobic, Claire.
Yeah, but you don't support secular Quranism. You're always finding idiotic.
So because I think your idea is silly, that makes me an Islamophobe.
I know you don't like. I know you don't like Muslims.
That's not true.
You met me.
That's not true. I've had Muslim friends in the past.
Okay, well that's nice to know. I shouldn't just assume.
I don't have. Well, thank you. At least you had just admitted that you assume it. See, because half the time you don't know what you're talking about.
I have a memory of you saying mean things about Muslims, but obviously I can't remember the occasion.
I have criticisms about Islam and about, let's just say, I've had criticisms about certain Muslims in the past, but the same goes for any other ethnic or religious group. There are good and bad in all of them. I'm not an anti-Semite and I'm not an Islamophobe.
Do you have any Jewish friends? I bet you don't.
Well, today, let me think.
Ever.
Oh, I have in the past. When I was still, when I was asleep and blue-pilled. I used to have Muslim and I had a Jewish friend and I had Muslim friends, and they would both try to get into my ear and explain to me why the other side was wrong, and it was all centered around the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and both sides would always give me compelling and very convincing and emotional anecdotes.
Can you remember them?
To try to convince me, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, I had to objectively look into the matter, investigate it for myself, and I concluded that in a general sense, the Jews are in the wrong. when it comes to that conflict. And I think anyone that looks at it, studies it objectively, will come to that conclusion. And mainly it has to do with the terrorism that was involved in the establishment of the state.
Okay, I think it goes back.
Ethnic cleansing, displacement of people, land theft, terrorism, assassinations.
Well, I can't say I know in great detail. I mean, it's like a tedious quarrel between a couple, and and they will be talking about stuff that went back 20 years, and really you're not interested.
Well,
So
no, to
I guess
understand this
that's
conflict,
really my attitude.
to understand this conflict, you've got to go back to, basically the end of the 19th century.
Oh, okay. What event?
Well,
The
you have to
Crimean War?
no, you have to look at the beginnings of Zionism, and then go from there, and then take a look at World War One, World War Two, and take a look at the Jewish lobby pressures that were being applied on British government and American government, and there was a lot going on. There was many things going on, but
Yeah, so much going on. I sent you this video, the Rabbi Singer video about these Jews, these Reform Jews voting about stuff. Did you listen to it?
Claire, I don't look at 99% of the stuff you send me.
I know, but this one I thought was very interesting.
You
because
flood me with
I know, I'm
dissertations
sorry. I'm
and
sorry.
walls of
I think you were-
text, and it's like I'm not going to read all that.
Okay. But I thought this one was particularly interesting in that Rabbi Singer was saying these Reform Jews, they've just voted to not believe in the afterlife. That and then he talked about how they basically voted about what Reform Jews should believe or not believe. And what I think we need to understand is that Reform Judaism is considered heresy by Orthodox Jews. It's like they don't even attend each other's events in the UK anyway. It's like an Orthodox rabbi would never attend a Reform Jew event, and I didn't know about it until actually it was recently when Duvid said that's what Orthodox Jews think of Reform Jews, that they are heretics and they don't even want to be buried in the same cemetery as each other.
Look,
and I don't think we know all that. I don't think most people know that, the enmity between Orthodox and Reform. They just think, oh, they're all alike.
well, I mean, but that's always been the case. I mean, the religious Jews in Israel are going to get their asses kicked by the IDF, and the religious Jews will continue to stampede each other, kill each other, live in slums and horrible, deplorable conditions. They're going to reject the modern world. It's because they're mentally ill. They're fanatical, and but they vote, and their vote is useful, and as long as their vote is useful, they're going to be tolerated until they can no longer be tolerated.
Well, what's happening in Israel is like the Israelis are actually inviting lots of non-Jews into Israel because the secular Jews can't bear the idea of these voting Orthodox observant Jews voting for all kinds of conservative things. So they're actually, saying, oh, here's the lost tribe of Israel that we found in India or Japan or whatever. And it's like, we're going to invite them in, convert them into Reform Judaism, and they'll be, the new people, they'll be Israeli citizens, and they'll outvote those pesky Orthodox Jews with their, crazy conservative ideas. That's basically what they're doing now.
The ironic part.
I do hear rabbis complaining about that.
The ironic part is that the religious Jews didn't want to have anything to do with Zionism prior to 1948, and it took a lot of convincing from the atheists to get them to get on board. And now it's completely different times. But the left and right conflict has existed amongst Jews since before 1948.
I'm sure it did, because the urge to assimilate must be very strong. Because I think we
But
all want to be.
it's not just that. I mean, I'm talking about also a left and right conflict amongst the atheists. So Ben Gurion and Begin turned on each other, but then you had this new dynamic of these religious right-wing conservative Jews who killed Rabin because their religious leaders told them, if you kill this man, you'll be doing a good thing for your people.
Why? I can't remember why they killed Rabin or assassinated him.
Well, because Rabin wanted to make peace, and he spoke about establishing some kind of civilized relation with Syria, and bringing about, I guess, something that the religious elite clearly did not want, and a lot of people were happy when he was assassinated.
Well, okay, so Jews don't agree.
They're not united. The only common denominator, Claire, the only thing that keeps them united is their fear and loathing for the Gentiles, for the goys. But once
Arabs, I suppose.
Well, the Arabs, yes, because of Palestine. But if it wasn't for Palestine, they were prior to that conflict. They were perceived as like distant cousins or something. But make no mistake, Claire, if Jews have their way and they enslave all the goyim and the Gentiles, they will turn on each other. They will Jew one another.
I'm sure they will. I mean, I'm sure they don't like each other that much. In the same way that Gentiles don't like each other that much.
Well, today, Claire, no one really likes each other that much. I mean, we live in a mentally ill world today. Everything is crazy.
It's an open mental asylum.
Yes, and you're trying to convince the warden and the rulers of the asylum to change their ways, right? You want to convince the usurious banking cartel to stop being a usurious banking cartel.
Yeah. Well, and also... for people who...
Wouldn't you say, Claire, that is your mental illness that you're suffering?
No, because we already know how indebted most countries already are. So if they abolish usury, they can default on their debts. So there's something for everyone in this idea. It's actually the most powerful idea. It's like, well, if we can default on our loans, we can just start again.
You sound like Jen now.
You're saying
your idea is the most powerful idea. It's like you sound like Jen when Jen says that my model predicts everything.
Well, I'm not saying anything of the sort, but I think it could have a pretty wide appeal to governments and individuals over their heads in debt. And once this idea gets going, it'll happen, Domingo. It will. I don't see why you keep obstructing me and trying to demoralize me. You'd be so proud of me if it happened. You'd be so proud of me if it actually got off the ground.
I think the entire debt should be forfeit as well, because it's a debt that cannot be repaid. It's impossible. It's impossible to repay it. There's just not enough money in the world to even repay it.
Yeah. So it's going to happen,
but we don't need the people responsible for creating that debt in the first place to get rid of it. The Gentile people, the Gentile nations need to simply default on it and cast out this Jewish influence and this Jewish corruption.
Islam will ban usury. You need to replace what you have now with something better and
You
stronger.
don't need a religion to ban usury.
Yes, you do, because usury is a behavioral addiction. Hitler wanted to ban it. He really did. He was talking about, well, I think the stock exchange is an international casino. We must do something about that. And then he went into
all the
power and he thought,
speculation, all
well,
the
but I have all these
financial
imperial
schemes.
wars that I want to fund. So he could have abolished it, but he decided that he did want to fund his imperial wars after all. Just the very idea of creating money out of nothing, Domingo, is irresistible. Most people can't resist. Most governments, most civilizations can't resist it.
But to get away with it, though, you need a public that is dumb, that is unaware,
And just
that's
as corrupt,
that is where the media wing
That's
comes
why
into
you
play.
need the religion. You need a religion to say no. God forbids it. It's not just Domingo or Claire or indebted peoples and governments. It's got to be God for it to kind of.
I'll agree with you that people need faith. People need faith, and people need to dig deep and find the strength that it takes in order to be able to refuse a big bribe.
And they can only find the strength if they think God forbids it. Or are pushed in that general direction of thinking we need the law to be
not that God forbids it, but they have to dig deep and realize, I need to say no to this criminal bribing me with this bag of money. I need to say no for my people, my family, my nation, and to keep my nation strong and healthy, and to keep this corruption out.
Yes, but people are weak, and they need. It's like, well, who says that maybe we're meant to.
People can be weak. People can be weak, but they are at their weakest when they're placed in desperate situations. And the people that place them in desperate situations are the corruptors, the ones that seek to create conditions that bring about despair and desperation, which then lead to crime and then the spreading of poverty. There's all these control mechanisms that are in place, Claire, and it all goes back to that small group of people at the very top controlling the money system.
So it needs to be banned. And I just don't see how it can be done without the power of religion.
But not just banned. We have to ban the people who are experts at it.
Yeah, just ban the whole thing. And then they will stop. But you need to say it, and you need to invoke a higher power. You can't just say Domingo says and people.
Well, the higher power is the nation. You don't. All I'm saying is you don't have to believe in God, but at the very least, you should believe in your country, and in your fellow countrymen, and in your family.
But they don't. A lot of people don't have families, and they hate their own fellow nationals.
Well, right, but that's because their country is full of recently arrived legal and both illegal immigrants that are bringing an entirely different culture with them and don't truly intend on assimilating, not in any meaningful way. They're going to obey traffic laws, and they'll pay taxes and get a job, but at home they're going to bring their foreign religion, their foreign language, and foreign customs, and the next thing you know, your country is no longer your country.
Yeah, and that's because you don't have a culture that is compelling enough.
Look at the chat. Look at what It's Okay to Be a Self-Hating Jew just said. He said, as an atheist, I practice ancestor worship. Right?
He's just being silly. What does that even mean? Only
No,
the
but
Chinese.
what it means is that even though he doesn't believe in God and an Abrahamic God, at least he looks to, right? He's looking to people that came before him as a source of inspiration.
Well, yes, we can all do that.
And there's a faction of Islam that does that, and they're considered like heretical, I think.
I don't know.
They worship like dead imams from the past and whatnot, and they set
Sounds
up
like idolatry.
Yeah, that's what they're accused of. Yes.
Well, the Chinese worship the idea of having ancestors. Just that.
Well, it's important because we are our ancestors.
Yes, we wouldn't exist if not for our ancestors.
Yeah, but also it's important to learn from their mistakes so that we don't repeat them, and it's important to pass on the traditions and the teachings, and there is a reverence in that.
Well, I think a lot of that is also tied up in what kind of history that we learn at school. And the history curriculum often changes, and you can find
who controls the curriculum? Who's been changing the curriculum?
liberal.
The same special interest groups that have an incentive in keeping this world all fucked up.
Liberals. Yes, liberals.
Jews.
Liberals.
Liberal Jews. Well,
yeah, okay, then if your problem is with liberal Jews, then your problem is really with liberalism, which has taken over Christianity, and you won't admit that, but obviously it has taken over Christianity because the whole idea of America was liberal. They think the First Amendment is an achievement, it's a liberal Western American achievement.
Jews like Jews like Chuck Schumer.
He's just a politician who happens to be Jewish,
who happens to have been in Congress forever.
Well, he's based in New York, isn't he? Yes, is he a New York Jew or something? Maybe I got that wrong.
Well, I can tell you one thing. He's Jewish first and American second.
Yeah, but a liberal
that is Jewish identity politics for you right there.
Okay, so my proposal, and you should be pleased with my proposal of a register of Jews. It's like,
yeah, but your register is going to be made and controlled by them.
Yeah, it's got to be controlled by rabbis, Orthodox rabbis.
And you also want them to rank the religions.
Yes.
I don't.
Yeah, because you don't want Christianity to be bottom of the heap. I know that because it would be too embarrassing. But unfortunately, you're worse than Hinduism. And it's like, this is what you can't accept, that you've had the wrong religion for 2,000 years. But maybe the fact that...
No, you're wrong. You're just wrong.
I think you find it very hard to come to terms with that, if God exists, he wouldn't approve of idolatry.
I could care less how Jews would rank the religions in terms of idolatry and blasphemy.
Yeah, because you don't like them, but the fact is that
if
Jews
Claire, if I
Jesus to worship.
Claire, here's an interesting little fact for you, okay? If I were to rank the religions in terms of which one tortures and rapes babies the most, Judaism would be at the #1 spot.
You're just going on about circumcision, and you don't even... It's just so hypocritical that you would pretend to care about the foreskin of male infants of the people you hate.
They mutilate and suck the penis of babies, Claire.
Yeah, but there's no danger of infant Jewish boys being becoming extinct or being hurt, or you don't really
Well, you
care
well,
about their
clearly you haven't
forces.
done the research, Claire, because botched circumcisions are very common, and babies have died from herpes
I don't care
infections.
one way or the other.
I know you don't care about dead Jewish babies, Claire. You don't care about babies, period.
I don't want to pretend to care about them. I just think it's so hypocritical to
I
that
mean, you
you
basically
pretend to
want to
care about them.
you basically want to murder disabled children.
No, I don't.
Well,
I'm just saying, if anybody wants to, it should be their parents.
okay, but you know what? I would not allow that in my country. In my country, the mutilation and torture and rape of babies would be forbidden.
Yeah,
And
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 that
if
would be
you're
a way of kicking them out. I
and if
understand.
you're part of a religion that considers that to be some kind of religious ceremony, well then fuck off and go practice your ceremony where I can't find you.
Yes, that is a typical view of people who want Jews to feel unwelcome.
It's torture, Claire. They're sucking the penis.
I think it's just a sharp pain, and then the baby forgets.
Oh, yeah, because they give him a pacifier that's coated in sugar. So not only are they raping and torturing babies, but they're also getting them addicted to sugar.
Is that what they do? Oh dear.
That is what they do. They also torture and murder chickens in the streets for their Kaparos ritual. It's a backwards religion, Claire, and it's time for it to disappear.
Well, I think under secular Quranism it will, but you can't do these things overnight with the help of my register of Jews, where a lot of the unobservant ones will be struck off, where they miss 3 Sabbaths in a row or something like that.
Will there be any labor camps under secular Quranism?
I had no plans to build labor camps, but slavery would be reintroduced. Because I was thinking
Really?
today, yes, it would have to be, because it's really so stupid in the UK. There aren't enough HGV drivers, so the food's going to go, the cost of food and everything else is going to go up because there are not enough people driving lorries because of Brexit.
So did you realize that because banning did you make the realization when you said, if I ban usury, there's going to be a need for slavery in terms of to cut costs?
Well, it's just like there's a huge welfare claiming class, and they don't do anything. So that slavery is the most effective form of work there, where people are made to work to get their benefits. But obviously, it's very high maintenance to run, and therefore the most effective thing to do it would be a kind of humane slavery administered by the state.
Humane slavery. But so are you saying, I mean, would people become property? Because a slave basically is purchased and owned by another person.
Well, my idea of humane slavery would be that the property of the slave would reside in the state, and the state hires out these slaves to hirers of slaves who would be obliged to accommodate and feed them.
Hang on. When you say the property of the slave, so you're
So
saying
the government owns the slave, right?
the
So
government owns the slave and then allocates the slave to
whoever wants to hire them, you want a gardener, maid,
and then the person that hires the
accountant.
slave is paying the government.
Yeah, but and there will be manumission will be implied in any contract of slavery. So the slave would be just working out whatever he owes society to gain his freedom again, and it would the wages would be paid properly to the government, who will take whatever needs off, and then said, "Oh, you just finished your, finished paying your last bit, and you now have your freedom," and off
So
you go.
okay, so it would be like indentured servitude. You're
Yeah, kind
you're
of.
working your way towards liberty.
That's right. That's right. And the important thing to note is that you wouldn't just be hired out to some horrible slave owner who'll whip you to death. You'll get a slave visitor to you know come and visit you to see that you're working properly, and that government property hasn't been damaged, and you won't be left on your own, neglected, abused.
Would slaves be allowed to breed and create slave children?
Well, can slaves marry each other? I'll have to look up what the Romans did. Um, so I'm actually not sure, but maybe you put a scenario to me, and maybe I'll kind of think about it.
Yeah, I
I
guess
mean,
you haven't really.
no, I wouldn't want slave owners to say, "Oh, we'll just breed lots of little slaves," because no, you don't want to do that.
Because then you would have lots of them and their value would go down.
Yeah, it would go down, and actually, it's if you have too many slaves, like the Roman Empire did, it's actually bad for you, because what happened uh, in Imperial
Too many
Rome?
mouths to feed.
No, no, no. I mean, they basically made the plebs redundant, and had to entertain the plebs with bread and circuses, and they became so useless and degenerate, rather like the people, well, like the welfare claiming classes are now. So they could, barely read or write. They expected to be entertained with the games. They didn't want to join the army because it was too hard for them. So Imperial Rome had to keep recruiting the soldiers you know, from the empire, and they were loyal, and then eventually they couldn't do it, and then they had to pay mercenaries, and mercenaries are, they just take a long time, and then you give them the
Well,
weapons, and then
I,
you can't do anything with them.
I suppose in a modern setting with modern technology under secular Quranism, if ever there was too many slaves, you could probably, you know,
You can free them.
you could secretly process them in a facility and mix them in with beef and turn them into food.
Oh, that's Soylent Green. No, that's horrible.
Okay, I was just checking to see if that idea was appealing to you.
No, what a horrible idea.
I don't
Soylent
know.
Green well, it gave me nightmares.
I don't know. I just thought
Yeah,
maybe.
okay. I don't want slaves to be mistreated. Actually, I wouldn't mind trying out, this sort of thing myself.
But isn't making them slaves sort of already a mistreatment?
No. It's important for people to understand that they can't just sort of declare bankruptcy and shit like that, and then never pay back whatever they owe. It's like you have to be careful not to get yourself into debt, or you will end up being a slave, and then you have to work for your liberty, and it's rather demeaning. So don't do it.
But there won't be any usury though, right?
No.
So there won't be any
people
money.
are
There won't
kind
be
of
any money
protected,
lending.
but people might do stuff. I mean, like cause damage that they can't pay back.
But
Or
also, the other thing that you said, Claire, is that once you establish secular Quranism, everybody's personal debt would be absolved, and as long as they paid
if they
back,
pay back the capital, yes.
if they paid back the principal.
Yeah, the principal. That's what I meant. Yes.
Okay, but for those who haven't, and let's say who are delinquents on their who have have had delinquency on their payments, then
Mm.
they would become the indentured servants.
Yes.
Is that it? And then what about like all the people that are currently in prisons? Would they also become automatic slaves?
Well, it depends on whether anybody wants to hire them.
Well, is anyone going to want to hire a violent rapist?
No, but maybe the violent rapist has some kind of skill. I don't know, send down mines or something. I don't know.
Maybe he could be put on the front lines and sort
For
of.
a deep sea diver,
He could be like a weapon of war, like a rapist on the front line.
soldier.
I
don't know.
think the Soviets did that in Germany, right? They handpicked like really sort of rapey men and then unleashed them on German women.
I think maybe men just become like that in war situations. You don't have to pick them specially; they just become like that.
You think there's a rapist that exists inside every man?
Probably, yeah. I mean, in the sense that there's a thief in every one of us because we see something we like and we can't afford it. We might want to take it. Same principle for a woman who isn't attracted to to the man.
I suppose there's a bit of a Jew in every Gentile.
I don't know what you mean.
What's inside of you, Claire? What do you have the potential for becoming?
Well, I like to think good things. Um,
You'd never murder a husband while he was sleeping, slit his throat, take his
it's a
money.
horrible idea. Horrible idea. No, I don't think.
There's no dormant psychopathic serial murderer inside you.
I hope not. I hope not. I think on the whole, I'm a kind person and I care about people and I want to improve their lives. And I just find it very frustrating when it's so obvious and then they pretend not to understand. And I can see that they're, obviously neurotic or psychotic. And um, but I think eventually they will understand. But more people have to say the same thing. And I'm trying to say things in a rather repetitive way so that people can at least grasp my ideas and perhaps repeat my words so they can do the thing that I hope they will eventually do and save themselves and their civilization.
It's like your Atlas, Claire. It's like you're trying to hold the world up on your shoulders.
It's lonely. It's a lonely job. I hope, Domingo, that you will join me or at least help me a little bit and, explain why things are so bad, but it's not so
Look,
hard to do.
I support you in banning usury and having people resolve their debt issues. But you do not have my support in terms of your cucking to the rabbinate and making them rank the religions in terms of blasphemy and idolatry.
Why? Why not? Because it will just make everything move sooner, and then secular
And
Quran would be considered no hide, and then I can get things done.
I think the freedom
That's all they were made, God's chosen people, to do, to rank like secular Quranism.
and I think the freedom to practice any religion at all under secular Quranism is simply you're just
Guaranteed.
you're setting yourself up for conflicts of interest that will turn into serious major problems down the road.
I think eventually people will just join the mainstream religion. I think that's what they'll do. I mean, obviously there'll be also, oh, I still want to go to my synagogue, my church, my temple, whatever, and I have to let them. I'm not
Yeah,
going to close everything down.
But you would probably also grease the rails and make sure that Judaism became the most prestigious and most valid religion.
No, I think it will be phased out. You know why I think it'll be phased out? Because, okay, this is what I say to them. It's like, you've got your Torah, it has 36 capital offenses. God knows how many of these you will have clocked up in one lifetime. And your afterlife is not pleasantly or even described at all in the Torah. So really what they seem to be doing is that you be a good Jew and so that in your next life if you hadn't done all these things that would cause you to be stoned to death, or strangled to death, or burned to death, or beheaded, consider yourself lucky. And that's how harsh it was.
Yeah, but the rabbinical, the rabbinate and the rabbinical Judaism, aren't you more concerned about the Torah, the Talmud's influence as opposed to the Torah?
Well, the Talmud makes the very harsh Torah less harsh. So it kind of ameliorates, it mitigates the harsher punishments. It's just a way of, getting around that. Otherwise they would have to be sitting in the dark on the Sabbath. So the Talmud says, here's a little way of getting around this rule that sounds so rigid.
Yes, the
and
Talmud is all about their goalpost moving. I agree. But it also spits hot fire towards Christians.
Well, the thing is, they do associate being persecuted with Christianity, and it is Christians who have persecuted them most.
But Christians were persecuted, right? Christians were persecuted at first, and they were thrown to lions and burned alive.
By the Romans, it wasn't by Jews.
Well,
you're going to blame the Romans on Jews?
Who put pressures on the Romans to crucify Jesus?
Well, okay. According from
who puts pressure on who put pressure on the American military to invade Iraq because of WMDs?
People who have, I don't know,
the neocons, and they're Jews. It's all Jews, Claire. It's always Jews.
Okay, were they doing it because they're Jews, or were they just sort of, top of the tree in terms of academia, and they were just handpicked because they were, the brightest academics, and were chosen by the government? We don't know. We don't know, do we?
Oded a clean break. It's all about the neocons, and it's about furthering the Greater Israel Project. Who came up with the peace plan for this? Who came up with the peace plan for the Abrahamic Accords? The Kushners, a Jewish mobster family.
Well, have you ever considered, Domingo, that Jews could be just the servants of American imperialism? Just the servants?
No, because they attacked the Liberty, and they also staged the Levant affair, and they kill Americans without hesitation, and they suffer no repercussions. And Jonathan Pollard spies and steals from America. And the other greatest spying scandal involving Israelis was on the DEA by Israeli art students. And they also had Israeli assets on the ground on 9/11 in the form of a moving company. So
I don't know anything about that. So
of course you don't. Of course you don't. All right, Claire, I'm done here. I've stayed my hour.
Thank you.
I don't owe you. I don't owe you any more than this.
All right. Well, I'm glad you came to say your piece. I guess I'll read the chat now. Thank you for
calling. All right. Ta-ta.
Bye. Oh, quite a lot of comments in the chat, which I will read. Noticing Jews as anti-Semitism. I don't think I said that. Jews are a priestly caste and have the right to decide who is good and bad. No, they have their rules. Gentiles can decide according to the Noahide laws. They're just sort of broad principles that I think are fair enough. Yes, anti-Semitism is a white people thing because it's really a Christian thing. Because of the Judeo-Christian heritage of the West. can I don't have favourite races. I guess in a way I'm quite fond of white people because I've been living with them for so long. I don't know what link you posted, Stephen James. I'll highlight it and go to it later. You're probably right, self-hating Jew. The rabbis don't even listen to God anymore. I was saying that probably a lot of Jews, Christians, and Muslims only pretend to believe in God. Quite a few new people. I don't know who Matthaus Hetzenor is. Hello, Eva.